Have you ever felt a subtle nudge, a whisper in your mind guiding your choices, yet you couldn't quite pinpoint its origin? Imagine a world where every decision you make, every product you buy, every opinion you form is, to some extent, an echo of someone else's intent. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. It's the quiet, pervasive reality of our daily existence. We are constantly immersed in a complex web of influence, a silent symphony of persuasion orchestrated by forces we rarely perceive. From the moment we wake until we close our eyes, our minds are silently opened, receptive to countless signals designed to shape our perceptions and direct our actions. This journey isn't about uncovering grand conspiracies, but about peeling back the layers of the mundane, revealing the invisible threads that weave through every human interaction, making us surprisingly vulnerable. Prepare to see the world and yourself through an entirely new lens, one that exposes the hidden architecture of influence that dictates so much of what we believe to be our own free will. Consider the advertisements that seem to perfectly anticipate your desires, the news headlines that stir a particular emotion, or even a casual conversation where you suddenly find yourself agreeing with an idea you hadn't considered moments before. These aren't always coincidences or organic developments of thought. They are often the deliberate, though often subtle, application of psychological principles designed to bypass your conscious guard. Think of the way social media algorithms meticulously curate your feed, not just to entertain, but to subtly reinforce certain viewpoints or consumer behaviors. Or the friend who, through carefully chosen words, sways your opinion on a political issue, making you feel as though the conclusion was entirely your own. We navigate this intricate landscape daily, believing ourselves to be autonomous agents, yet unknowingly dancing to the rhythm of unseen puppeteers, our choices less a product of pure volition and more a response to cleverly crafted stimuli. The illusion of choice is perhaps the most powerful form of manipulation, for it disarms us completely. The truth is, our minds are not impenetrable fortresses. They possess inherent vulnerabilities, natural pathways of thought and emotion that, while essential for our survival and social cohesion, can also be expertly exploited. These aren't weaknesses in the pejorative sense, but rather universal psychological tendencies, shortcuts our brains take to process an overwhelming world that become entry points for external influence. Imagine your mind as a sophisticated operating system, brilliant and powerful, yet with certain default settings or backdoors that, once understood, can be accessed by those who know how. This isn't about being inherently flawed. It's about being human. Our desire for belonging, our need for certainty, our aversion to loss, our tendency to trust authority. These are deeply ingrained aspects of our psychology. And it is precisely these fundamental human characteristics that, when skillfully targeted, render us susceptible to manipulation, often without a flicker of conscious awareness. This series promises to illuminate these hidden mechanisms, transforming them from invisible threats into clearly understood tools. We will embark on a profound exploration, one that will fundamentally alter how you perceive every interaction, every message, every decision. You will learn to recognize the subtle cues, the linguistic traps, the emotional triggers that have, until now, operated beneath your radar. Our journey will culminate in the unveiling of the 7 most powerful psychological triggers, the master keys that unlock the doors to human persuasion. Understanding these isn't about learning to manipulate others, though the knowledge could certainly be applied that way. Instead, it's about building an impenetrable shield, fortifying your own mind against unseen attacks, and reclaiming genuine autonomy in a world saturated with engineered influence. This knowledge is power, not just to defend yourself, but to truly understand the forces that shape our collective reality. Are you ready to truly see? To dismantle the illusion and understand the silent forces that have, for too long, held sway over your thoughts and actions? The journey we are about to embark on is not for the faint of heart, for it demands a willingness to question everything you thought you knew about your own free will and the nature of human interaction. But for those brave enough to look, the rewards are immeasurable: a newfound clarity, an unshakable confidence in your own decisions, and an unparalleled ability to navigate the complex social landscape with wisdom and discernment. The time has come to stop being a passive participant in the grand theater of influence and become an active, aware, and empowered observer. The silent opening of your mind has already begun, and what you are about to discover will change the way you perceive the world and yourself forever. The whispers we just discussed, the subtle currents shaping our choices without our explicit consent, are not random occurrences. They are the deliberate, or often unconscious, deployment of what we call psychological triggers. Imagine these triggers as ancient keys, designed by evolution itself, not for locks made of steel, but for the intricate, often unguarded, chambers of the human mind. They are the shortcuts our brains developed over millennia to make rapid decisions, to survive in a world where hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. These aren't logical arguments, they are primal impulses, deeply embedded programs that, when activated, compel us to act in predictable ways, often bypassing our conscious thought processes entirely. We believe we are making free will choices, weighing pros and cons, when in reality, a deeper, more ancient algorithm has already begun to run, guiding our hand, our voice, our wallet. This is the silent architecture of influence, operating beneath the surface of every interaction, every advertisement, every political speech, every casual conversation. It's a force so pervasive, yet so invisible, that its very existence often goes unquestioned, leaving us perpetually vulnerable to its sway. Understanding this architecture is the first step towards true mental sovereignty. These triggers aren't malicious by design. They are relics of a time when our ancestors faced immediate threats and opportunities. Evolution hardwired us with shortcuts, the deep-seated urge to conform, for instance. In a tribal setting, deviating from the group could mean ostracization or worse. Our brains developed a powerful bias towards social proof, a heuristic that signals, if everyone else is doing it, it must be safe or beneficial. The desire for reciprocity, too, fostered cooperation, ensuring mutual survival. These weren't conscious calculations. They were innate responses enhancing genetic propagation. In the modern era, these ancient programs persist in vastly different contexts. A marketing campaign uses millions served not as a logical argument, but by tapping into that primal need to belong. A salesperson's small gift triggers the desire to reciprocate, making us more inclined to agree. Our rational minds attempt to resist, to analyze, but these triggers operate far below conscious reasoning, often hijacking decisions before we even realize. They are the master puppeteers, pulling strings we can't see, making us dance to tunes we don't consciously hear. The brilliance, and indeed the danger, of these psychological triggers lies in their ability to circumvent our logical defenses. Our conscious minds are equipped with critical thinking, with the capacity for analysis and skepticism. But these triggers don't engage with the conscious mind directly. Instead, they tap into emotional responses, pre-programmed biases, and deeply ingrained heuristics that bypass the frontal lobe's careful deliberation. Think of it like a backdoor into your decision-making center. While your rational mind guards the front gate, these triggers slip in through a side entrance, influencing your perceptions, shaping your desires, and ultimately steering your actions. This makes them incredibly powerful tools. In ethical hands, they persuade positively, encouraging healthy habits or inspiring good causes. A doctor might use authority for patient adherence, but in less noble hands, or by accident, these mechanisms become potent instruments of manipulation. This is the razor-thin line separating genuine influence from coercive control. Persuasion guides towards a beneficial choice. Manipulation exploits vulnerabilities for the manipulator's gain, irrespective of the target's true interests. The profound irony is that our very ignorance of these mechanisms is what leaves us most exposed. We operate under the illusion of complete autonomy, believing every decision is a product of our own reasoned thought. This blind spot makes us easy prey. Without understanding how these triggers work, we cannot identify their deployment, nor consciously counteract their effects. We become unwitting participants in a game we don't even know is being played. This journey is not about teaching manipulation, but about inoculating you against it, equipping you with awareness to navigate the social landscape with discernment. There are overarching principles governing the psychology of influence. threads weaving through all individual triggers. These include the human desire for consistency, the draw of social acceptance, our response to authority, the magnetic pull of scarcity, and the compelling need for reciprocity. These aren't just abstract concepts, they're fundamental levers that, when pressed, elicit predictable human responses. They are the universal grammar of influence, understood by every mind, consciously or not. The danger isn't just being swayed by a marketer. It's the erosion of your agency, your ability to make independent choices. It's the subtle shifts in belief, the unconscious adoption of narratives serving another's agenda, the feeling of being pulled where you didn't consciously choose. This isn't merely consumer behavior. It's about your worldview, relationships, political opinions, your very sense of self. To reclaim that agency, to fortify your mind against these invisible assaults, requires precise understanding, how each specific trigger operates, and how to recognize its activation. We are about to pull back the final curtain, to illuminate the 7 distinct psychological triggers that, once understood, will transform your perception of human interaction forever. Prepare to see the world through an entirely new lens. This is not just knowledge, it is a shield, a compass, and a powerful tool. The time for passive vulnerability is over. The time to unlock the secrets of your mind and the minds of others has arrived. The subtle pathways of influence we discussed often converge on a fundamental human impulse, one deeply wired into our social fabric, the principle of reciprocity. This isn't just about good manners. It's a powerful, almost primal drive to return what we have received. From the dawn of civilization, mutual aid and the expectation of repayment formed the bedrock of cooperation, ensuring survival and community cohesion. When someone does something for us, offers a gift, or extends a favor, a psychological debt is subtly, often unconsciously, incurred. This isn't inherently negative. It's the glue of healthy relationships. However, in the hands of a manipulator, this innate need to balance the scales transforms into a potent weapon, a silent lever used to guide our decisions and actions without our full awareness. It's the first, most pervasive trigger we must learn to identify and disarm. The exploitation of reciprocity often begins with an unexpected gesture, a seemingly benign act of generosity that appears to come without strings attached. Think of the unsolicited free sample in a store, a small gift from a salesperson, or a complimentary service that wasn't requested. These aren't just marketing ploys. They are calculated moves to activate that deep-seated sense of obligation. The manipulator understands that even a small, seemingly insignificant concession can create a disproportionately large psychological debt. You might feel a vague discomfort, an urge to somehow even the score, even if you consciously believe you owe nothing. This feeling is the trigger firing, urging you towards compliance, making you more receptive to subsequent requests, often larger and more self-serving for the giver. It's a silent contract, agreed upon without a single word. Consider the pervasive nature of this trigger in various aspects of life. In relationships, a partner may perform an extravagant favor only to later use that good deed as leverage for a request that would otherwise be unreasonable. In politics, think of public figures offering small, localized improvements or making grand, seemingly selfless gestures, building a reservoir of goodwill that they later tap into for votes or policy support, creating an unspoken expectation of loyalty. The subtle danger lies in the intention behind the initial act. Was it genuine altruism or a strategic investment in your future compliance? This distinction is crucial, yet often blurred by the very nature of the reciprocal impulse. It is a powerful current pulling us toward actions we might not otherwise take. So how do you recognize when this invisible hand of reciprocity is at play, guiding your actions? The key lies in self-awareness and critical evaluation of the situation. Pay attention to your internal state. Do you feel an uninvited pressure to say yes to a request, especially after someone has done something for you, even if that request goes against your better judgment or personal interests? Is the return being asked disproportionate to the initial favor or gift? A salesperson offering a small discount might then pressure you into a much larger, less favorable purchase. A friend doing you a minor favor might then ask for a significant, time-consuming commitment. These are red flags. The feeling of obligation, when it arises without genuine desire to reciprocate, is a clear signal that the reciprocity trigger may be intentionally activated against you. Empowerment comes from understanding that you are not bound to an automatic response. You have the agency to decide when and how to reciprocate, or even if you should. The first step is consciously separating genuine generosity from manipulative tactics. If an act feels like a calculated move to elicit a future favor, you are under no obligation to comply. You can politely decline, stating that you appreciate the gesture, but do not feel compelled to return it in a way that feels uncomfortable or exploitative. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, understanding that a favor given with manipulative intent does not create a legitimate debt. By recognizing the subtle pressures and consciously choosing your response, you begin to dismantle the invisible chains of manipulation, asserting control over your decisions and protecting your boundaries from those who seek to exploit your innate human desire for balance and fairness. But the arsenal of influence holds more than just the unspoken debt of reciprocity. There's another, equally potent weapon wielded in the shadows of our decision-making, one that preys on a primal human fear, the fear of loss. This is the insidious dance of scarcity and urgency, a meticulously choreographed illusion designed to strip away our time for rational thought and propel us into impulsive action. Imagine a scenario where an object, service, or opportunity is suddenly presented as limited, either in quantity or duration. The clock starts ticking, the stock dwindles, and an invisible pressure begins to mount. This isn't merely about desire, it's about the sudden, acute pain of potentially missing out, a sensation far more powerful than the pleasure of acquisition. It's a psychological shortcut that bypasses our logical filters, whispering directly to our reptilian brain, act now or regret it forever. This trigger doesn't just encourage, it compels, creating an artificial panic that often blinds us to the true value, or lack thereof, of what is being offered. The mechanism behind scarcity and urgency is deceptively simple, yet profoundly effective. When something is perceived as rare or available for a short period, its perceived value skyrockets. Think of limited edition products, flash sales expiring in hours, or only 3 seats left at this price. These aren't just marketing slogans. They are carefully crafted psychological levers. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize the preservation of resources and opportunities. In ancient times, a scarce resource could mean survival. Today, it means we might miss a deal. This innate programming is exploited by manipulators who understand that restricting access, whether real or fabricated, instantly elevates desirability. The perceived loss of an opportunity, even one we hadn't considered moments before, triggers a potent emotional response, overriding logical analysis and pushing us toward hasty commitments. The less time we have to think, the more likely we are to act on impulse, fueled by the anxiety of potential regret. We encounter the scarcity and urgency trap in countless scenarios, often without realizing it. Consider the online retailer flashing a countdown timer. Offer ends in 2 hours, 37 minutes, and 15 seconds. Or the airline website warning, only 1 seat left at this price. Even real estate agents leverage this tactic, mentioning multiple offers already on the table, or this property won't last. These are not always genuine reflections of reality. Often, the timer resets, the last seat reappears, or the multiple offers are merely rhetorical devices. The goal is to induce a heightened emotional state where the perceived pressure of acting quickly becomes paramount. This isn't about informed decision-making. It's about creating a bottleneck in your cognitive process, forcing a snap judgment before you can properly evaluate the merits, necessity, or even authenticity of the supposed opportunity. It transforms a thoughtful decision into an urgent escape from potential loss. The consequence of falling into this trap is often regret. We buy things we don't need, commit to services we don't fully understand, or make decisions under duress that later appear irrational. The sudden surge of adrenaline, the fear of missing out, and the perceived exclusivity combine to create a powerful psychological cocktail. This cocktail short-circuits our critical thinking, making us susceptible to overpaying, overlooking flaws, or accepting unfavorable terms. Manipulators understand that once caught in the current of urgency, our ability to swim against it diminishes rapidly. We stop evaluating the product or service itself and begin evaluating the risk of losing access to it. This shift in focus is precisely what the tactic aims to achieve, diverting attention from value and quality to a ticking clock or dwindling stock, ensuring a faster, less scrutinized commitment. To arm ourselves against this pervasive influence, we must cultivate a habit of pausing and engaging in critical observation. When confronted with claims of scarcity or urgency, the first and most crucial step is to question, is this limitation genuine, or is it an artificial construct designed to pressure me? Does this deal truly expire, or will a similar one appear tomorrow? Could I find this product or service elsewhere, perhaps at a better price or with better terms, if I simply took the time to look? Resist the urge to act immediately. Take a deep breath. Step away from the offer, even for just a few minutes. This simple act of creating distance allows your prefrontal cortex, your center of rational thought, to re-engage. By consciously challenging the manufactured urgency, you strip the manipulator of their most potent weapon. Understand that genuine opportunities rarely require split-second, unexamined decisions. True value withstands the test of time, and deliberate thinking is your ultimate shield against the panic induced by manufactured scarcity and urgency. Having navigated the treacherous waters of reciprocity, where unseen debts bind us, and having dodged the frantic urgency of scarcity that clouds our judgment, we now turn our attention to a more insidious, yet equally powerful, psychological lever, the deep-seated human need for consistency and commitment. This isn't merely about keeping promises. It's about an almost primal urge to align our actions with our self-image. From a young age, we are taught that consistency is a virtue, proof of integrity, tie, and reliability. Society praises those who stick to their word and frowns upon those who change their minds. This ingrained value, while essential for social trust, becomes a formidable weapon in the hands of a manipulator. They understand that once we commit to something, even something trivial, a powerful internal pressure arises. This pressure compels us to follow through, to remain consistent with that initial step, even when doing so is no longer in our best interest. It is a silent chain, forged not by external force, but by our own desire to maintain a coherent self-image and avoid the discomfort of cognitive dissonance. The exploitation of this need often begins with what is known as the foot-in-the-door technique. Imagine a seemingly innocuous request, signing a minor petition, agreeing to a small survey, or helping with a trivial favor. These small commitments feel harmless, yet they are psychologically potent. By agreeing to this tiny request, you subtly shift your perception of yourself. I am the kind of person who supports this cause. The manipulator then escalates the request, now asking for money, time, or participation in something more substantial. Because your identity has already begun shifting to match the initial commitment, the pressure to remain consistent pushes you to comply again. The manipulator never forces your hand. They simply guide your self-image step by step until your own identity becomes the mechanism of your manipulation. The psychological mechanism at play here is multi-layered. First, there is the internal pressure to maintain a consistent self-image. Once we've publicly or privately aligned ourselves with an idea, our brain works overtime to justify that commitment. To refuse the next request creates cognitive dissonance, a deeply uncomfortable state where our actions conflict with our beliefs or past statements. Second, there is the social pressure of appearing consistent to others. A manipulator carefully orchestrates situations where breaking consistency feels embarrassing, shameful, or socially inappropriate. They weaponize your desire to appear stable and reliable. This is not persuasion, it is identity engineering, and it is one of the most dangerous forms of psychological influence because it feels entirely self-generated. Consider the common sales tactic where a salesperson asks you a series of questions designed to elicit small, yes responses. Do you want to save money? Do you believe in protecting your family? Wouldn't you agree that convenience is important? Each affirmative answer, however general, acts as a tiny commitment. By the time they present the actual offer, you've already agreed with a chain of statements and saying, no now feels contradictory. In relationships, this pattern appears when small favors gradually escalate into overwhelming demands. Could you just help me with this? Becomes, since you're already helping, could you also? Until you're burdened with responsibilities you never intended to accept. In political campaigns, asking for a simple pledge, a yard sign, or a brief volunteer hour dramatically increases the likelihood of future support or donations. Commitment and consistency rarely feel like manipulation in the moment. They feel like loyalty, integrity, or simply staying true to one's word. That's precisely why this trigger is so effective. So how do we defend ourselves against this pervasive psychological trap? The first step is developing awareness of initial commitments, no matter how small or harmless they seem. Before agreeing to anything, pause and ask, if this escalates, am I willing to follow through? Or, is this small yes truly aligned with my goals? Or is it just easier to agree right now? The key to freedom is granting yourself permission to change your mind. Saying no later does not make you inconsistent. It makes you self-respecting. You do not owe anyone a continued commitment based solely on a minor action you took earlier. Integrity is not blind consistency. Integrity is making choices that honor your values in the present, not clinging to decisions made under pressure or manipulation. But commitment and consistency are only one weapon in a manipulator's arsenal. The next trigger attacks something even more personal, our emotional bias toward people we like. The liking trigger exploits our natural inclination to trust, support, and agree with people who resemble us, compliment us, or show interest in us. Manipulators know this instinctively. They create an illusion of similarity. They mirror your posture, your vocabulary, your interests. They flatter your intelligence or skills in ways that feel subtle and genuine. They construct a rapid emotional bond that appears organic, but is engineered to lower your defenses. Once you like them, the psychological gates swing open. Their requests feel reasonable. Their opinions feel trustworthy. Their intentions feel harmless. The liking trigger bypasses rational evaluation because it plays directly on emotional affinity. You aren't responding to the request, you're responding to the person. This is why charismatic leaders, con artists, and skillful negotiators invest heavily in rapport building. It's not the message they need to win, it's you. The danger is that once someone has established this emotional foothold, we often override warning signs, ignore inconsistencies, and suppress our intuition in order to preserve this positive connection. Liking makes manipulation almost invisible because it disguises influence as friendship, loyalty, and goodwill. So how do you protect yourself from the liking trigger? The key is learning to separate the person from the proposal. When someone you like asks you for something, pause and ask yourself, if a person I barely knew, or even someone I disliked, made this exact same request, would I still agree? This single question cuts straight through emotional manipulation. It forces you to evaluate the merits of the request rather than the feelings you have toward the requester. True discernment means acknowledging that liking someone does not automatically make their intentions pure or their ideas wise. You can enjoy someone's personality while still setting boundaries. And don't fall into the trap of believing you are immune to charm. No one is. The most dangerous manipulators do not come across as pushy or excessively charismatic. They feel warm, genuine, familiar. They make you feel seen. They make you feel understood. That's the trap. The goal isn't to become cynical, it's to become aware. When you feel an unusually fast, intense connection with someone, especially if they appear at a moment of vulnerability or offer unexpected attention, that's not destiny. It's a signal, a red flag wrapped in a smile. Slow down. Observe. Separate emotion from evaluation. This is how you keep your mind sovereign, even in the presence of charm powerful enough to cloud judgment. But even if you master this, there is another trigger, one rooted not in emotion, but in perceived expertise, that can make even the most self-aware person surrender their judgment, the authority trigger. Manipulators know that a symbol of authority, a title, a uniform, a credential, or even a confident tone, can override a person's instincts and silence their doubts. The human brain is conditioned from childhood to trust authority figures, whether it's a doctor, a professor, a manager, or someone who simply looks like they know what they're doing. Authority pulls a lever deep inside us. It tells us that questioning is risky, that compliance is safe, and that challenging an expert makes us foolish or disrespectful. This is why the Milgram experiment remains one of the most disturbing scientific studies in history. Ordinary people, instructed by a man in a lab coat, delivered what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to another human being. Their moral instincts screamed for them to stop, but the presence of an authority figure convinced them to continue. Manipulators exploit this same psychological wiring. They manufacture credentials, exaggerate expertise, or surround themselves with symbols of credibility. They use complex jargon to create the illusion of intelligence. They speak with unwavering confidence to silence your inner doubts. They understand that if they can make you feel inferior or unqualified to question them, you will hand over your power willingly. Was that it was pure fiction, a carefully crafted illusion built on confidence, symbols, and borrowed authority. He had no special insight, no sophisticated models, no elite connections. What he did have was a deep understanding of psychological leverage. By positioning himself as an expert, he triggered Mark's instinct to defer, to trust, to silence his own inner warnings in favor of someone who appeared more knowledgeable. This tactic is common among fraudulent financial advisors, pseudo-scientific gurus, cult leaders, and manipulative bosses. They create an information hierarchy where they sit at the top as the sole source of truth, and your doubts are framed as ignorance, fear, or lack of vision. They build an intellectual bubble where questioning them is seen as irrational or even disloyal. So, how do you penetrate the costume of false authority? The first step is verification. Don't take credentials, titles, or claims of expertise at face value. In an era where information is widely accessible, a true expert leaves a verifiable trail. Publications, references, legitimate testimonials, consistent work history. Look for independent evidence, not the curated image they present. Second, trust your internal compass. If advice from an expert contradicts logic, facts, or your own fundamental values, that tension is a signal. Ask questions. Lots of them. A real expert welcomes scrutiny because their knowledge is genuine. They can explain, clarify, and adjust without becoming defensive. A false authority, on the other hand, responds to questioning with intimidation, condescension, or emotional pressure. They will try to make you feel foolish for daring to challenge them. That emotional reaction is not a sign of your ignorance. It is a sign of their deceit. Recognizing this trigger alone can protect you from the vast majority of manipulative schemes. If you're gaining value from this breakdown and want to keep strengthening your psychological defenses, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. It signals that this kind of deep insight matters, and it ensures you won't miss the next crucial pieces of the manipulation puzzle. Because the authority trigger is merely the doorway, the method manipulators use to step into your mental space. But the next trigger is what allows them to lock the door from the inside and take control. It's the mechanism they use to reshape your reality, isolate your thinking, and make their voice feel like the only one that's safe to trust. It's the trigger that turns one bad decision into a catastrophic spiral. That trigger is social proof. Julian used it masterfully. He constructed an entire false social ecosystem around Mark. He introduced him to a small circle of so-called fellow investors who were, in reality, part of the con. During meetings, these individuals expressed unwavering enthusiasm for Julian's strategies, praised his brilliance, and boasted about incredible returns they were supposedly earning. This created an atmosphere of consensus. If everyone else, smart, successful, confident people, believed in Julian, then Mark began to feel that his own doubts were unfounded. He was trapped in an artificially manufactured echo chamber designed to suppress independent thought. This is the same psychological force that makes us trust a product with thousands of glowing reviews, even if many are fake, follow social media trends, or adopt beliefs because everybody else seems to hold them. When the crowd is real, this instinct can protect us. When the crowd is manufactured, it can destroy us. The defense against manipulated social proof is to become a fiercely independent thinker. You must learn to value truth over consensus. When confronted with what appears to be a unanimous opinion, especially in high-stakes situations, you must consciously step back and seek out dissenting voices. Actively look for the counterargument. In Mark's case, if he had taken the time to have just one honest conversation with an old, trusted colleague outside of Julian's curated circle, the entire illusion would have collapsed. Manipulators work tirelessly to isolate you precisely to prevent this kind of external verification. They label concerned friends as negative, skeptical family members as unsupportive, and anyone who questions them as jealous or toxic. They reframe the outside world as a threat, making their artificially constructed echo chamber feel like the only safe place. Your willingness to break out of that chamber is your only escape route. Just as Mark was fully enveloped in this false consensus, Julian deployed the sixth psychological trigger, the one designed to push people from consideration to action, scarcity. This principle states that we value things more when they appear limited. The fear of losing an opportunity, the infamous FOMO, is one of the most powerful emotional motivators. Julian suddenly announced that the ultimate investment opportunity, the one he had been slowly priming Mark for, was about to close. He claimed a major institutional investor was preparing to buy out the remaining shares, and that there were only 72 hours left to participate. This artificial deadline created a sense of urgency so intense that it wiped out Mark's ability to evaluate the situation rationally. There was no time for due diligence, no time to seek advice, no time to question anything. Scarcity short-circuited his reasoning and locked him into emotional decision-making. This, act now before it's gone FO. Rever tactic is the backbone of high-pressure sales and manipulative schemes. Think of limited-time offers, exclusive memberships, countdown timers, or only a few spots left claims. These tactics are not designed to inform, they are designed to induce panic. When scarcity is activated, our brain shifts from deliberation to survival mode. We stop asking, "Is this right for me?" and start asking, "What if I miss out?" That shift is exactly what manipulators depend on. To defend yourself, you must train your mind to recognize the emotional spike of urgency as a red flag. When you feel the rush, the tightening in your chest, the pressure to act immediately, that is the moment to pause. Genuine opportunities can withstand scrutiny. Manipulated ones demand speed. Julian had now cornered Mark psychologically. He had built indebtedness through reciprocity, captured trust through liking, shaped identity through commitment, silenced doubt through authority, engineered consensus through social proof, and now driven action through manufactured scarcity. The final trap, the seventh and most paralyzing psychological trigger, is fear. Not the fear of physical danger, but the quiet, suffocating fear of consequences. Fear of humiliation, fear of looking foolish, fear of legal repercussions, fear of losing relationships or reputation. Manipulators use fear as a cage, an invisible prison that prevents their victims from seeking help or admitting that something has gone wrong. This is why so many victims remain silent long after the manipulation has become clear. They are not physically restrained. They are emotionally shackled by shame and fear. The most chilling part of Julian's strategy was how he used fear to seal Mark's silence. He didn't need threats. He simply allowed Mark to believe that speaking up, asking for help, or backing out would expose him to embarrassment, professional ruin, or even legal trouble. The fake investors hinted that some of the deals were in a gray legal area. They subtly suggested that withdrawing now would make Mark look complicit. This is the final stage of manipulation, when the victim becomes their own jailer. Fear convinces them to stay quiet, to comply, to endure. Manipulators know that once fear takes hold, they no longer have to exert effort. The victim will trap themselves. But the twist in Mark's story was even darker than he realized. Weeks after losing everything, while sorting through old family photos in a state of shock, he found a picture from a childhood birthday party. In the background stood a teenage boy, isolated, unsmiling, half-hidden. It was Julian. Or rather, Julian was his estranged cousin, a member of a branch of the family that Mark's parents had dismissed and humiliated decades earlier. This wasn't random. It wasn't greed. It was revenge, meticulously planned over years, perhaps decades. Every psychological trigger had been deployed not just to steal money, but to dismantle Mark's life piece by piece. Mark wasn't chosen because he was weak. He was chosen because he represented a wound that had never healed. The defense against these 7 triggers is not complicated. It is deceptively simple. The pause. Before reciprocating a favor, before escalating a commitment, before trusting a charming stranger, before deferring to an authority, before following the consensus, before rushing into a scarce opportunity, and before letting fear silence you. You must learn to pause. In that brief moment, rational thought returns. Manipulation loses its grip. Clarity reappears. Mark never paused. He moved from one emotional impulse to the next, each triggered by psychological levers he didn't even know existed. His downfall wasn't stupidity, it was speed. Manipulation thrives in momentum. Awareness thrives in stillness. The pause is the mental reset button that breaks the chain of influence and allows your conscious mind to reclaim control. That moment of hesitation, the fraction of a second before you react, is your battlefield. It's where manipulation begins to crumble, where the fog lifts and clarity returns. Mark, in his downfall, never gave himself that pause. He was a runaway train, driven by impulses that felt like his own but were merely strings pulled by an invisible puppeteer. The key to disarming the triggers is not possessing an impenetrable shield, but maintaining constant vigilance over your own mind. It is recognizing that we are all vulnerable to pre-programmed behavioral patterns. The first trigger, reciprocity, is among the most insidious. Someone gives you something, however small, and instantly we feel a debt. It's a psychological IOU that demands repayment, a subtle pressure that pushes us further than we would normally go. An unexpected gift, an unsolicited favor, a piece of exclusive information. These can all be the hook. The manipulation doesn't lie in the act of giving, but in the hidden expectation behind it. The cold calculation that you will feel compelled to repay with something far more significant, often against your own interest. To disable reciprocity, you must brutally acknowledge intention. Ask yourself, is this gesture genuine, or is there an agenda hidden beneath it? This isn't about becoming cynical, but about analyzing context. If the offer feels too generous, too sudden, or disproportionately kind, a warning bell should ring. Accept the gesture if you want, but mentally separate the gift from any sense of obligation. You owe nothing for kindness that was never kindness to begin with. Recognizing this is your first act of psychological freedom. The second trigger, commitment and consistency, is even more dangerous because it exploits our need to appear coherent. Once we make a small concession, a tiny promise, or a simple statement, we are psychologically compelled to follow it with larger concessions to maintain the image that we are consistent and reliable. It's the classic foot in the door, a small, harmless request that opens the path for increasingly significant demands until you find yourself in a situation you never intended to be in. Defense here requires immense courage, the courage to admit that you may have changed your mind. There is no shame in reassessing a situation and withdrawing from a commitment that no longer serves your best interest. Manipulation thrives on our reluctance to appear inconsistent or weak. Instead of feeling trapped, remember that true strength lies in protecting your boundaries and staying loyal to yourself, not to a fabricated image of consistency others try to impose. The third trigger, social proof, is an overwhelming force, especially in times of uncertainty. If everyone is doing, buying, or believing something, our minds naturally conclude that it must be right. It is the comfort of the herd, the illusion of safety that comes from following the crowd to avoid the risk of error or standing out. Skilled manipulators create the illusion that everyone is on board us. Fake testimonials, inflated numbers, or simply suggesting that you are missing out on what everyone else already has. The pressure to conform can be nearly irresistible. The weapon against social proof is independent validation. Instead of accepting the narrative of the crowd, question it. Is there real, impartial evidence behind this? Or am I being swept away by popularity and the fear of missing out? Seek trustworthy sources, concrete data, and diverse opinions. Remember that the majority is not always right, and many of the greatest frauds and manipulations in history were widely accepted before collapsing. Your truth and your logic must prevail over the seductive chorus of the masses, no matter how loud it is. The fourth trigger, authority, is perhaps the most deeply rooted in our psyche. Since childhood, we are taught to respect and obey authority figures, parents, teachers, doctors, police officers. This deference is vital for social order, but it is also a gateway to manipulation. A title, a uniform, a credential, or even technical jargon can be used to make us accept things without questioning, to silence the inner voice that whispers, "Something feels off." How many atrocities have been committed under the justification of just following orders? Here, the defense is systematic and respectful doubt. It's not about disrespecting legitimate authority, but about questioning the legitimacy of the order or the information itself. Ask, is this authority truly an expert in the subject? Is there a hidden interest behind this instruction? What are the real credentials and experience behind this facade? Demand clear explanations, verifiable data, and if necessary, seek a second opinion. Your autonomy of thought should never be sacrificed at the altar of a title or imposed status, no matter how imposing it seems. If the content so far has made you think and question the world around you, then the mission is being fulfilled. If you are learning something new and valuable about how the mind works and how to protect yourself, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what allows us to keep unraveling these secrets and bringing you knowledge that empowers you. The fifth trigger, liking, is the most subtle and often the hardest to fight because it exploits our fundamental need for connection and acceptance. We are more likely to say yes to people we know and like, to those who seem similar to us, compliment us, or share a sense of affinity. Manipulators become your friend quickly, finding common ground, praising your intelligence or your style, building a superficial bridge of trust that disguises their true intentions. It is lethal charm, a smile that hides a knife. The countermeasure to liking is to separate the person from the proposal. You may like someone, but that does not mean their offer is good or that their advice is unbiased. Build a mental barrier and evaluate the proposal on its own merits, as if it came from a stranger. Ask yourself, would I accept this if it came from someone I didn't like? Am I being influenced by charm or by the quality of the idea? Charisma can be powerful, but it must never be the main metric of your decisions. True friendship does not require you to compromise your best interests. The sixth trigger, scarcity, plays with our fear of loss. The idea that something is limited in time, quantity, or opportunity creates an artificial urgency that prevents us from thinking rationally. Last units. Offer valid only today. Limited spots. These phrases are designed to deactivate your logical brain and activate panic mode. The perception that something is running out increases its value in our minds, pushing us into impulsive decisions we would never consider under normal circumstances. To neutralize scarcity, the tactic is simple, but requires discipline. Ignore the urgency. Ask yourself, do I really need this now? Or am I being pressured by the threat of loss? The majority of urgent offers can wait. Real scarcity rarely comes with so much noise. Manufactured scarcity is a trick. Give yourself time to research, compare, and reflect. If the offer disappears, maybe it wasn't that good to begin with. Do not let the fear of missing out on a fleeting opportunity push you into a bad deal or an unfavorable situation. The seventh and perhaps most powerful trigger is fear. Not the fear of immediate physical danger, but the subtle, paralyzing fear of losing status, being humiliated, making a mistake, being excluded, or even facing legal consequences, as Mark experienced. Manipulators use fear as a silencer, a tool to keep us trapped in unfavorable situations, preventing us from speaking up, acting, or seeking help. The veiled threat of exposure, social or professional ruin, becomes an invisible chain that keeps us from escaping. Confronting fear requires courage and a deep understanding that paralysis is the real danger. Ask yourself, what is the worst that could truly happen? And what is the cost of doing nothing? More often than not, the fear imposed on us is bigger in our imagination than in reality. Seek support, talk to trusted people, look for professional guidance. The light of truth and the support of others can dissolve the shadows of fear that manipulators use to control us. Do not allow the terror of an uncertain consequence to condemn you to a life of submission. Building psychological immunity is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-awareness and practice. It is like a muscle that strengthens with each repetition. Every time you catch yourself hesitating, questioning an impulse, or resisting pressure, you are training your mind to recognize manipulation patterns. The ability to observe your own thoughts and emotions without being dragged by them is the superpower you need to navigate the complex world of human interactions. This immunity manifests in the ability to say no assertively and without guilt. Saying no is not a sign of weakness, but of strength and self-awareness. It is a declaration that your boundaries matter, that your time and resources are valuable, and that your decisions are yours, not someone else's. Practice refusing small requests that don't align with your goals. This builds the confidence needed to resist larger pressures when they arise. Remember Mark and Julian's story. Julian's manipulation was not an act of brute force, but of psychological engineering. He didn't force Mark to do anything. He simply created an environment where Mark felt like he had to comply. The difference is subtle but fundamental. When you understand that the pressure is coming from inside you, triggered by external cues, you gain the power to shut those cues down. True freedom lies in becoming the master of your own mind, rather than a puppet in the hands of invisible manipulators. Every time you pause, question authority, validate social proof, and resist urgency, you are rewriting the script of your own life. You are becoming the director, not just an actor, in a play written by others. The art of deconstructing manipulation begins with depersonalization. Many of us, when we realize we've been manipulated, fall into the trap of guilt or shame. How could I be so naive? I should have known better. This self-criticism is exactly what the manipulator wants. It weakens us, isolates us, and prevents us from seeking help. Understand that psychological triggers are universal. They affect everyone, regardless of intelligence or experience. Manipulation is not evidence of your failure. It is evidence of the effectiveness of the tactics being used. The next step is validating your own intuition. Often, before logic even processes what's happening, there is a feeling, a discomfort, a whisper of doubt, an inner voice saying something isn't right. Learn to listen to that voice. It is your most primitive and effective alarm system. Manipulation, at its core, tries to suffocate this intuition with distorted logic, manufactured emotions, or pressured environments. Trust your instinct, even when it seems irrational. Develop a strong circle of trust. Having people in your life who can offer an external, impartial perspective is invaluable. When you feel pressured or when an offer seems too good to be true, present it to someone outside the situation. Simply verbalizing the facts to another person can reveal the cracks in the manipulator's facade. Manipulation thrives in isolation. Community is its most powerful antidote. Finally, understand that defending yourself against manipulation is not a battle you win once, but a continuous state of awareness. The world is full of people with different intentions, and the psychology of influence is a powerful tool that can be used for good or for harm. Your responsibility is to arm yourself with knowledge, practice self-awareness, and strengthen your emotional resilience. By doing so, you not only protect yourself, you become a guiding light for others who are still trapped in the shadows of manipulation. Mark's story, with its shocking twist, is a somber reminder that manipulators may be closer than we imagine, and their motives may run deeper than simple greed. But the final lesson is not about fear. It is about the power of choice. You have the ability to recognize, resist, and ultimately break free. This was only the beginning of your journey to understanding the human mind. In our next video, we will dive into the secrets of body language, revealing how to read people's hidden intentions before they even speak a word. Don't miss it. What you are about to learn could completely change the way you interact with the world.